Wait, maybe we should wait just 2 minutes.
Okay.
You can share the poster.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, great. Thank you. It's okay?
Yes, you can start if you want.
Thank you, Mikael. Okay. Well, hi, everybody. I'm Edna, and I'm glad to see you, to welcome to this session about night studies. Thank you, CISAN, for the organization, and also at the University de McGill. And we make something with all these things with the University of the Bretagne Occidentale. So today we have two colleagues that they will be talking about night studies. We are going to listen to Manuel and Chiara's presentation. Manuel García-RUIZ, he works at Centro de Investigación, the Studies of Sociology at Lisbon. And his research subject is Lights on Romania, Impacts of Light and Art Circuit. And we listen also Chiara VITRANO. She has a postdoctorate position at the SWEDISH Knowledge Center for Public Transport at MALMÖ University. And the title of her research subject is Time-Related Accessibility and Inequalities on the Urban Night. The organization of our session is like the last time. We have 20 minutes by presentation, and after we have a session of question and answer about the presentation. So I give you the start, Manuel. So you can start, and thank you for being with us. So, thank you.
Thank you, Edna, for your invitation. Thanks for the organizing committee for having me in these seminars. So what I bring to you today is a case study and as well an explanation of an ongoing project. The ongoing project is Lights on Romania. It's a light festival that takes place in the city of Cluj in Romania. And I have to say that even that is not my main case of study, as far as I am studying more, or I'm more focused on the festivals of light that takes place in Portugal, I consider that is a very nice example of what is going on the market right now in almost a lot of cities of Europe and elsewhere. So for those who doesn't know me, you have in there some social media contacts, and it will be very helpful if you want to see more pictures of these festivals. So we start with this. So I will bring you some definitions, some explanations of the phenomena, some contextualization, more information about Lights on Romania, and a powerful narrative. This is the agenda, basically. If it does work, sure. The first thing that I would like to clear is to make a definition. And I think that is necessary to make a definition as far as I am always asked if one thing is a festival of light or if it's not. And making the point from the beginning, it will help us to really clear where I'm going to talk and what are the cases that I discard as it doesn't really enter into my field of expertise and as well the field I am studying. So a festival of light is an independent secular, and this is very important, cultural program that it has been programmed by some specific curatorial practitioners. It takes place in the public space. not necessarily in the public. It could as well take place in some semi-public spaces, as it could be shopping windows, and it takes as minimum 2 nights. This is kind of important. Otherwise, we will be talking about a light event, which many times is confused because it's so popular today to have these video projections or video mappings all around the world. What we are talking is a program, a cultural program that is set just for enjoying of this kind of art. So, some examples of what it is and what is not a festival of light. So, one of the questions that I received many times is if a procession is a festival of light. They have some elements that bring light to the street, and so many times they occupy the public space with many infrastructures. So unfortunately, a procession is related to religion. So as I explained before, it should be a secular thing. And obviously, many people will consider still that the following with an anthropological view. But what I'm bringing to you is a case of post-events, professional events that take place in the street. So many times as well, I am asked if carnival lights, as you can see on the top of the right, the carnival lights in Ceuta are pretty popular, let's say, or the Christmas lighting are part of these kind of festivals. Unfortunately not. Once again, those lighting are part of a bigger program that is understood as the carnival program or the Christmas program. One of the examples, I'm thinking that this event, these seminars are taken from initiative from Mexico. I thought that I could bring one example from there, that is the Filux Mexico, which is probably the biggest festival of light in Latin America or North America, in general, the Americas. It's a huge, massive program. And unfortunately, I know that they are having some situations for the continuity. Never mind, you could find it as well in Mexico or in Guadalajara. Those are the same guys, and they offer these kind of projects. So festivals around the globe. I'm talking about festivals that they are secular, that they bring culture, that they bring light art to the streets, and so many people think that is just a European phenomenon. It is pretty much a European case, but since 2015, we have this kind of cultural program spreading around the globe. It all began, as many people consider, it's not a certain thing because it's impossible to really track all the festivals around the globe. Many people think that the first Festival of Light, it was the Festival of Light of Lyon, or Luci d'Artista in Italy. But nowadays, it's probably everywhere. So one thing that is very interesting on this cultural scheme is that so many festivals, they share the interventions. And when I talk about the interventions, they can be the art pieces or knowledge or any other kind of service. So pretty much all the artists, they know each other, they circulate through the cities, they circulate through the festivals, and now it's getting bigger and bigger. So many times we are having artists coming from a different continent just because they were referred or it was Instagrammable. This is a very important thing. Festivals of light, they feed on the likes of people many times, and they always try to surprise the people in situ with works ongoing. This map I'm showing you on the screen, it only has 203 cases that I've been tracking since 2014. And I can tell you that it's always growing, it's non-stop. Probably this growth is due because it's a relatively cheap way to activate a city. It's a relatively interesting thing to bring to locals as far as you can offer them some cultural or artistic insights or new things that they can admire. And also as many municipalities embrace them as an easy way to internationalize their municipalities or as well to reactivate the tourism in low seasons. Well, the case study that I'm bringing to you today is Lights on Romania. Romania is a periphery country in Europe, in East Europe. For those who doesn't know where is Romania, which is absolutely normal. It's, as you can see, is in the opposite side of Portugal. So every time I go over there, I have to stop in so many countries because there is not a direct flight from Lisbon. And especially the Lights on Romania takes place in Cluj-Napoca. Cluj-Napoca is in the, following with the historic regions of Romania, is one of the cities that were in Transylvania. Nowadays, it's part of the Northwest region that it was the NUTS 2 after the European division, which is kind of a crazy thing if you look at, if you are in there, because even that they are not Transylvanian right now, the feeling of being Transylvanian is still persists. So more information about Cluj-Napoca that I think that is quite important is that it's one of the biggest cities in the region. And as well as the authorities referred, is one of the richest cities in the region too. Basically, it's formed by 75% of Romanians following the census of 2011. Next year, I think that they will have another one, following with Hungarians with a 15% approximately of people living in there. The religions, majority religion is Orthodox, following with Roman Catholics. Orthodox are something like a 65% people. Why I'm telling you this? It's because Lights on Romania take place during the month of December, which normally takes place at the same time that Christmas. So Romanians, as many other regions in the world, they celebrate with some lightning in the streets. But the ways that they illuminate the streets are a little bit different to other regions. And one of the situations that give birth to this festival, they were the decisions made by the municipality to illuminate the streets. In 2014, the municipality decided for first time to invest in a new licitor, or a new company with lightning installations, and they decided to put this kind of structures on the street. Unfortunately, the people living in Cluj, they didn't really accept it as the lights were extremely blue, and that winter was especially raining. So blue light with extreme and cold weather were making the streets unwalkable and very difficult to drive with the cars. So very unpleasant, extremely unpleasant. So many people raised their voices saying, "What are you doing with our city? You are absolutely making our cities unlivable." One of these voices was Andy Deisler, which is one of the heads of Lights on Romania. So he decided to raise his voice as far as he was a journalist working in local television. And he asked the municipality about the possibility to make an alternative system of lighting to celebrate Christmas. The municipality accepted, reluctant. They were not quite sure about what it was going to happen. So basically what they gave to Andy in this time was just a square. So from one year to another, they decided to allocate one square that it was not going to receive the listed illuminations. So in this square, they were completely free to install whatever they want. So these guys opened a contest. They invited architects, they invited designers, they invited a lot of people to submit some kind of artistical or architectonical alternatives. And one of those, the one that won, was the snowballs. I am very sorry I couldn't find proper pictures. That is the only thing I could find. So in this moment, the municipality, they accept this like a test, trying to figure out if it was a good way to implement, if it was a good thing or a good idea to implement in the rest of the city. So basically people living in Cluj, they accepted this activity like a very innovative. They really like it. They were very positive. And even though they had to face some difficulties because the people who implemented these artworks, they were the same guys who were implementing the public lighting, it was completely accepted. So it goes to the next year. On 2015, they start again. They open a concourse, a call for artworks. They receive a lot of artworks, and they decide to expand. In this moment, the municipality decided to invest much more money. Even though that it was not a local scale, it was just a very marginal scale, but they were trying to figure out if they were actually investing or not. What I'm saying this is because Cluj-Napoca is an ex-communist region, so they really have some kind of low budget for this kind of interventions, or they think that this is not a proper art as far as it's an ephemeral art. So the municipality was not really convinced about the nice impacts that this kind of event could have. Also, they were feeling that they were competing against their own lightning, their own Christmas lightning. So basically, they had this event. It took, again, the square. It was a completely success. In 2016, the organizers of this kind of bottom-up activity, they decide, or they were forced to conform a local identity. As far as so far, before they were working in individual terms, funded by Daisler Print House, that is the business of Andy, they were asked to be a collective identity. So from individual people paid by Daisler Print House, they become Daisler Associatia, the Association Daisler, which has the aim to offer every year or carry out urban cultural creative events to remain the space and make people enjoy of their own space, their own urban space. It was taken in February 2016. It was a very important time for them. And they were very few people in the beginning, as far as they were Danny, his brother, and wife. After that, many people joined to the association because they were actually motivated for a change on the streets, and they wanted more art in the streets, especially in those moments of the year when they have -degrees and they have to walk in the street and they want to feel comfortable and see something beautiful. So the team, trying to simplify everything right now, is formed by 3 heads. The first one is Andy Daisler, who is the manager and funding responsible. Then we have artists and the artistic director, that is Daniel Popescu, and the development manager, that is Raul Petri. This was in 2016 from now, and in 2017, I was asked to join the team as an invited or adopted, like they say, adopted reviewer. So something that is important to say is that none of them are professional event people. So they are somebodies who were very interested in this kind of activity and they wanted to implement it in Cluj. All this came as a subsequent thing that they had after a trip to Amsterdam Festival of Light, and they thought that they were able to bring these kind of interventions to Cluj and make it possible. They were, in fact, and also in terms of maintenance of this kind of event, they always refer that they work always with the same people, trying to grow and rise knowledge and try to avoid knowledge spilling. So, Lights in Romania in 2017, it was already the beginning. They had these fantastic interventions where the first ones that they had in front of Casa Matei, which is one of the, Casa Matei is the Faculty of Fine Arts, something like that. And it was probably the first proper, full and long installation. It was extremely well accepted and is still today. It became an stable installation. And in 2018, they launched the first full festival. It was formed by 14 installations, if I am not wrong, and they brought 4 pieces of art from different countries, which means that the festival, it was trying as well with one of the aims to foster the artistic ecosystem of the town, fostering and motivating local artists to move on. This year is especially important, not only because it was the first time that I was taking a full-time survey to thousands of people under the rain, under the snow, and so on, but it was as well because they came up with the idea of Miedor de tine. Miedor de tine in Romanian means something like I miss you, but it's something like very complex to explain because it's like the Portuguese word saudade, it's mostly impossible to translate, but it means something very painful in the moment somebody or something disappears. Miedor de tine is a cultural thing that is very in the hearts of the Romanians, and it was a completely success, as well as the first time that the moon of Lugdjam, it was established inside of a church. So they spilled the installations all across the city, especially Old Town, and people were invited to pass from one to another, knowing a little bit more of the city first, about the light art, and also creating new paths that absolutely benefit to the local sponsors. This event obviously had the money of the municipality, but also they had a lot of local sponsors that they saw an opportunity to bring tourists, bring more people to their installations, and probably develop their own. I have to say that also they had a very good idea that it was associating the festival to the local guide tour. So they have 42 free guide tours with a huge number of people visiting, especially under the bad conditions of meteorological weather. So just to keep you in mind, probably there were around 100,000 people visiting the festival just because of the festival, not only because they were walking in the street. 2019, they come up with the idea of Chimie. Chimie means me too, something like that, connecting the topic of the previous year and establishing a dialogue with the Romanian diaspora. So all the Romanians who were living abroad, they were connected somehow with the city. And we have to keep in mind as well something that I didn't say before. Cluj is a very student city, so many students, they have finished their studies the year before, and they were trying to connect with them again. This edition, they had another one piece of Lugdjam, this Gaia, and they were installing this in a huge, massive shop center in a mall. Again, the map taking place in all around the city, but also, as you can see on the point 12, 13, and 14, they were exploring the extra radio, the first circle of Cluj. Many people, they were a little bit scared because it's a little bit far, to tell the truth. It's more than 40 minutes walking, but even though they were ready to go to that turn to the city, it was a completely success. As you can see in here, many people, they were concentrated. In here is the from Central Park to Casa Matei, and in front of Casa Matei, people, they were gathering and trying to know more about the history, thanks to their tour guides, and knowing a lot more about light art and night possibilities. So that year, it was a huge, massive year because they realized about the power of narrative, the storytelling thing. And the storytelling is something that I was trying to make them understand since my arrival. So in 2018, they decided to send Miedor de tine to London, and in collaboration with another festival of light that it takes place in there. And on the same days, more or less, they had Siemie, and in Bucharest, a little bit more later, they had Tiaspet, which means I'm waiting for you. The reaction of the Romanian diaspora was huge and massive, and it was created a very emotional relation between the three locations, making possible that many people, they were obviously not people from London to Romania, but many people from Cluj-Napoca visiting Bucharest and Bucharest to Cluj-Napoca. So that made not only the night like a time for a collective ephemereness, but it was also a time to be together. So the festival now that it takes also in Christmas is associated now with the union of all the Romanians, and they remember that even that they go, they are always in their hearts, using the words of some people I interview. I think that I am exceeding the time, and I am so sorry for that, but I want to keep a few things in mind. This activity in concrete, this special festival, it demonstrates that we can rethink, and there is a need to rethink the urban ornamental lighting, that there is a lot of ways to do things, that bottom-up activities, they should be encouraged, because local people, many times they are almost for passive consumers of this kind of activities, but they can do things together, promote local artists, and obviously one of the best situations of this, it was that Light on Romania and Cluj entered into a cultural international tourism, and as well in a professional light art circuit. With this, being very fast, I'm done, and I will wait for your questions.
Thank you, Manuel. It's really interesting. When you're talking about, I remember about my PhD research. So I have some questions like the other people. We are going to listen, Chiara. We take note about the question for Manuel, and after we open the session about question and answer. So, Chiara, if you want to share your screen.
Yes, I will. So, can you see the slide? Yeah.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Just move this here. Okay. So, hi everybody, and thank you, Edna, and all the organizers for inviting me to speak about my research. The study that I'm going to present today was a part of my PhD thesis, where about 3 years ago, I explored the links between temporal inequalities, transport, and accessibility, focusing on the urban night and analyzing accessibility by public transport to nighttime activities. So what do I mean when with access inequalities? So a part of research focusing on urban inequalities has focused on those inequalities emerging from differentials in the degree of access to urban opportunities that we can define as access inequalities. With urban opportunities, I mean here relevant destinations such as jobs and education opportunities, leisure opportunities, public and private services, and other facilities in the city. Adopting a definition that has been provided by Noel Cass, Elizabeth Shove, and John Urry, we can define access as the ability to negotiate space and time in order to accomplish practices and maintain relationships that people take to be necessary for normal social participation. So according to this definition of access, access is the result of interaction between practices and social obligations that an actor wants or needs to carry out, their relationship with both space and time, so with both spatial and temporal processes taking place in the city, and of course the effects that these processes have on the available infrastructures and on the individual needs, resources and constraints. What are these spatial and temporal processes? The spatial processes have been studied and debated extensively in urban studies, and they concern mainly the morphological changes of a city and the way in which these changes have, for instance, reduced the proximity of opportunities and of residencies, generating the demand for a higher mobility. But they also pertain to social spatial dynamics related to processes of segregation or stigmatization, for example, which can hinder access to urban opportunities. But on the other side, we have also temporal processes, time-related processes, which are much less investigated and are connected to the temporal characteristics of the production and consumption systems of the city. The contemporary city is a polyrhythmic city, which means that work, consumption, and leisure activities follow a multiplicity of rhythms, which are non-standardized and which are often conflicting. So these processes, both spatial and temporal, impose the mastery of a higher amount of resources in order to access urban opportunities. These include financial, cognitive, physical, and also temporal resources, which are not equally distributed. And this unequal distribution contributes to reproducing access inequalities. So in the literature, studies on accessibility inequalities have mainly explored the spatial dimension and neglecting the temporal one, we could say. This could be connected to the lack of data and of adequate methods and tools for the analysis of urban times, urban rhythms. But today we will focus on the temporal dimension instead, and on the inequalities emerging in the contemporary polyrhythmic city. What is the polyrhythmic city? So with this ideal type, some scholars refer to the temporal configuration of contemporary post-industrial cities, in contrast with the isorhythmicity of the industrial city. So if the industrial city was a city of standardized and synchronized social times, homogeneous time city, where the priority time was the time of working activities and of the factory. In the post-industrial city, so in the polyrhythmic city, the factory time, of course, is not hegemonic anymore. New metronomes emerge, and they are related to a series of processes, such as the industrialization and tertiarization processes, or the diffusion of atypical working time arrangements, or the mass entrance of women in the labor market, or again, the diffusion of new technologies for daily chores, for mobility and for communication, of course. In the literature, the temporal framework of the post-industrial city or the polyrhythmic city emerges as defined mainly by three interdependent processes, which are acceleration, multiplicity, and the aspiration to a 24/7 city, which together contribute to the more general dynamic of desynchronization. So briefly, acceleration indicates both the phenomenon of global spatio-temporal compression, as David Harvey has defined it, but it also refers to an increased sense of emergency, of temporal pressure, of time scarcity, which is experienced at a subjective level, which is growing in connection to the demands of the labor market and of work-life balance. Multiplicity indicates the simultaneous participation of individuals to an increasingly wider range of practices with different temporal regimes, often conflicting. And the process that we are most interested in today in this seminar is the aspiration to a 24/7 city, or using an expression coined by Murray Melvin, the colonization of the night, which indicates the extension of working and leisure activities to the 24 hours, including those time slots which were previously mainly excluded from economic activities. Of course, the extension to the night was already possible in the industrial city, thanks to artificial lighting. But what characterizes the extension to the night in the contemporary city is the fact that it includes not only production processes, but also activities related to consumption and to leisure, as we have seen with the development of the evening and nighttime economy first, and with the aspiration to a city around the clock more recently. So all these processes contribute to a dynamic of desynchronization, which can make the work-life balance of individuals and their access to all urban opportunities harder to manage. So these temporal processes all contribute to defining urban rhythms. With urban rhythms, I refer to the way in which different actors manage and use the time available to carry out daily activities and to access urban opportunities in the urban space, which is temporally shaped or timed by the so-called pacemakers. Pacemakers are the metronomes of the daily life. They include both institutions, structures, technologies, activities that set the time of a given urban environment. So, for example, work and consumption places, transport systems, schools, they are all pacemakers. The pacemakers contribute to the timing of space, which means that they shape the space through time. For instance, public transport is a pacemaker and it times space because it brings people to given areas according to specific schedules. And on the basis of these schedules, it transforms places and distances. So pacemakers shape the actual action space of individuals. And the set of resources and constraints emerging from pacemakers interacts with the resources and constraints emerging from the social actors' characteristics, needs, and time use patterns. And these can generate inequalities, forms of temporal privilege or temporal disadvantage. In the polyrhythmic city, it is harder to guarantee the so-called temporal efficiency, which is the capacity of pacemakers to meet the actors' needs, using a concept put forward by Dietrich Henkel and Susanne Thomayer. So temporal efficiency reduces the risk of time poverty and enhances time sovereignty, which is a control over one's own time, and more generally temporal well-being, which we can briefly describe as a multidimensional condition, including the availability of sufficient time, of sufficient valuable time at the right moment that can be planned in advance and shared with others. Previous studies on social times have shown how time poverty and time sovereignty are strongly related to professional position and to the possession of specific resources, namely the financial ones, and is related to gender, being women the most exposed to temporal disadvantage, so to a lack of temporal well-being and time sovereignty. In the city, the enhancement of temporal well-being is one of the aims of a particular set of urban policies, unfortunately not well known, which are urban time policies. Urban time policies mainly consist of plans aimed at coordinating the schemes of collective and individual times in a specific territorial area. And they were first implemented in Italy during the 80s as a way to manage the growing difficulties of work-life balance for women. Then they developed to broader aims, including the temporal well-being of urban populations more in general, and have been adopted in different ways also in other countries in Europe. These policies are ambitious, yet not enough actionable tools to manage the temporal processes of a polyrhythmic city, probably also because the lack of data about urban schedules and the lack of solid methods to analyze urban rhythms has made it hard to develop effective interventions. So the fields of intervention of urban time policies include the schedules and calendars of services and of commercial activities, integrated spatial and temporal planning, time banks, and of course, transport and mobility. So urban time policies also guarantee a timing of space that takes into consideration the accessibility needs of different actors and urban populations. So the focus of this seminar, the night, emerges as a space-time of potential accessibility inequality and specifically of temporal and transport-related disadvantage. This because the process of extension of economic activities to the 24 hours while maintaining the status of the night as a secondary temporality can lead to temporal disadvantage and to access inequalities, especially among night workers and among those with less time sovereignty. These access inequalities can be based, for instance, on the contrast between night working times, human circadian cycles, and the traditional synchronization and co-presence needs. Furthermore, the night can be a space-time of temporal inequalities in relation to mobility and transport. In particular, the lack or inadequacy of the public transport supply undermines further the time sovereignty and accessibility for night workers and users who need to use public transport. Moreover, participation to the night and mobility during the night can also be hindered by issues of safety and perceived safety. So, especially for those with less control on their time, and for those who are exposed to transport-related disadvantage, access to some urban opportunities during the night can be extremely limited or even impossible sometimes. So consider this night public transport emerges as a fundamental requirement in the contemporary city to tackle potential disadvantage of workers and city users. This is particularly relevant in relation to the emerging characteristics of night work. Data about Italy show that even if the percentage of night workers has not increased from 2005 to 2015, night work pertains more and more often to workers belonging to temporally vulnerable categories, namely low-income workers and women. So I will now present some empirical research I conducted on nighttime accessibility by public transport in Milan. As mentioned before, temporal aspects, elements such as opening times or public transport schedules are rarely embedded in accessibility measures. So in the study I conducted, I tried to put together the few data available about the opening times and locations of nighttime activities, and I analyzed the accessibility by public transport using during the different hours of the night in Milan. Milan was chosen because it is a dynamic urban system that shows many characteristics of a polyrhythmic city, such as the emergence of 24/7 services. And furthermore, Milan can rely on a well-functioning night transit network, which works with different frequencies and routes, of course, but every night. So this offers the chance for a more meaningful analysis of nighttime transport and accessibility. So to assess accessibility to urban opportunities, Foll and Gallet suggest to consider the spatial and temporal organization of opportunities in the area and the transport supply, both from a spatial and temporal point of view. And they suggest also to consider the individual characteristics of the people that need to access destinations, but unfortunately were not considered in my analysis. So to collect the data about the main night activities and create on-off maps, so maps that show which activities are open at different times during the night, I queried the database of the website IAS.com. And this was the only available option at the time to collect data about opening times. Of course, I'm talking about open data. While data about public transport was processed using GTFS data, General Transit Feed Specification data, which are open data about the scheduled public transport service. And to create maps of accessibility to nighttime activities by public transport, I used two models, of course, with ArcGIS, a kernel density estimation model and the transit network analysis. So the analysis that I'm going to show you combine temporally dynamic on-off maps of opportunities with a temporally dynamic measure of the availability of public transport and of accessibility. So the following maps show the kernel density estimation model analysis. So they show a measure of the availability of public transport that can be used as a proxy for accessibility, which varies during the night. So in this map, for example, you can see the activities open at 11 p.m., including different kinds of workplaces, restaurants and bars, which are the white dots, entertainment places, which are the purple hexagons, hospitals and pharmacies, which are the blue triangles, supermarkets, which are the light blue squares, hotel and hostels, the orange pentagon, and other services, including a nighttime kindergarten, a public transport depot, and a logistic warehouse. which are the gray squares. So the green area indicates the availability of public transport in different hours of the night. The more transparent the green, of course, the lower the availability level. So for each activity opened at night, in the different hours of the night, it is possible to extract the density values obtained and measure the variation of accessibility in the different hours of the night. So the accessibility by public transport to nighttime activities between 11 and 3 decreased by 94% during a weekday and 85% during the weekend. This is what this analysis showed. But then I also performed another analysis, which is a transit network analysis, a bit more elaborated, which calculates the area that can be reached in a specific amount of time by public transport and by walking, leaving from a specific origin. I run this analysis with 3 different origins. The very center of Milan, which is the Duomo area, a semi-peripheral neighborhood, which is a Molise neighborhood on the external, this is the ring road, external ring road, so Molise is here, and a peripheral neighborhood, which is Baggio, which is further in the outskirts of the city. The more intense pink area in this case indicates the area reachable in less than 30 minutes, while the more transparent ones indicates the area reachable in less than 60 minutes. And again, we can have dynamic maps that show how the area reachable in 30 minutes changes during the night according to the origin. So if we measure the area reachable in 30 minutes, we can clearly see the differences between different origins, which were already clear by the maps probably, and the clear disadvantage of more peripheral areas, together with lower accessibility levels in the central hours of the night for all the origins. These low levels and the decrease in the central hours of the night can result in transport-related temporal disadvantage, especially for workers or for those living in peripheral neighborhoods. So these analyses show that the simple availability of nighttime public transport doesn't mean accessibility when public transport is not harmonized to the potential mobility demands of workers and users of night services. In Milan, specifically, the public transport supply between 1 and 5 doesn't take into consideration the more and more widespread 24/7 activities. Furthermore, these activities are located sometimes in less predictable areas than those of a traditional nighttime economy, often in more remote areas, less connected to the public transport network. So to conclude, the night is a space-time of potential access inequalities, but more in general, the consequences of urban rhythms on the quality of life of individuals and on inequalities emerges a neglected field of research where I think it's appropriate to recall the attention of the scientific community and of policymakers. So here are some references, and that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chiara. That was really, really nice. About a lot of information for the research. No, it's okay, because you are making a little it's about historic, the polyrhythmicity, the evolution. It's really, really great. Maybe if you want, after we can share your PowerPoint or something about, but because I think that
of course.
we need time. So thank you for respect the timing. We are going to pass to the answer on question. It's a little difficult if it's the word, because we are talking about the subject, really different subjects. Something really interesting, something relate maybe about urban marketing, production of the urban public spaces, and another subject really about mobility and the inequalities. I don't know if we had the question on the chat. Maybe right now we have the question. I don't know if you, maybe Mikhail,
yes.
yeah.
Yes.
I want to make two questions in added for other question. So for Manuel, it's only talking about they have a risk about urban marketing and about I don't know how do you say about the normalization of a process bottom up. So maybe a risk of something about the marketing urban marketing. And Chiara, about your presentation, it's the same in Paris about with peripheral neighborhoods. It's the same, or even worse in Mexico with the peripheral suburbs, so neighborhoods. Maybe do you have the other perspectives to research? Do you know maybe something that we can talking about more about accessibility, but the perspective of research, perspective of solution is a big question, but that is my question for Manuel and Chiara. Mikhail, I let you to present the other question for the people that participate.
Yes, I think they can start to answer, and then I can ask the question for Violeta. Yeah. If you want to start, Manuel. You're muted. Yes.
You asked me about light in Romania, or you are asking me in general about festivals of light? The question is, my counter question is quite important because there are different ways of doing, right? If you are asking me about lights in Romania, as far as the municipality stopped giving money, there is a little problem with the marketing, the urban marketing itself, in order to favorize the city itself. Indeed, it happens as far as it promotes the city, as far as it turns the city like a creative city, or brings more cultural capital to the city. And many municipalities around the world are seeing festivals of light like a kind of magic solution for this. So yes, there is a lot of marketing involved in festivals of light, urban marketing, I mean, other kinds of marketing also. But yeah, unfortunately, and this means that so many times, and probably that's another question that will probably pop up, so many times as the stakeholders, they put some money and they expect some impacts and they expect so many results. So many times these kind of installations, they are decreasing in quality for more spectacular effects and more Instagrammable pictures. Because by the end, what these people are trying to do is to bring people to create a more experienced situations. No, obviously, the festivals of light, as many other festivals, are part of the experience economy. So many times they are used as tools for urban marketing and urban promotion. And so many times are just born to do that. So that's also something that we have to keep in mind. These bottom-up, thanks to God so far, are maintaining the quality of art, and they are really taking care on the curatorship, but we never know.
Edna, I will need to ask you to repeat your question because I'm not sure I understand.
Yeah, I'm thinking about, no, it's okay. I'm thinking about that the same phenomena, same results. We have it in Paris, in Italy. So what the next, what we can do it about these results that is a little attended, you know, what we can do, because we found the same situation in different countries, European countries.
Yeah, I'm not sure I have an answer anyway, even if now I understand the question. But it's what I think is very important to consider when we think about public transport, especially, and accessibility by public transport during the night, is not just the availability of the service, as I was saying. So not just the fact that you have a nighttime service, which, by the way, usually in many cases, in many cities, is introduced, is implemented only as a service directed to the users of the evening and nighttime economy. So workers are rarely mentioned among the possible beneficiaries of the nighttime public transport. It's taken for granted that workers would go by car in some way or by any other mode. So in many cities, the introduction of nighttime public transport is very much associated to nighttime economy and people partying, which is great. It's of course very important, but it's not only that. That also reflects on the areas that are then served by public transport and those that are left without any supply or without a proper supply of a proper frequency, for example. And of course, other aspects that are not considered in my analysis have to include the quality of the public space that is crossed at night, because of course, using public transport implies also walking to the stop and waiting at the stop. So not only the quality of the public space in terms of pavements, banally lighting, but also how this is related to safety and perceived safety. So, and of course, then there is also the aspect of affordability of nighttime mobility, because of course, users of nighttime services sometimes are asked for higher costs to use taxis, for example, when public transport is not available. And in some cities, public transport is even more expensive during the night, which adds the burden of having to wait a lot for the users of nighttime services. This adds the burden of a higher cost, economic cost. So there are several aspects that need to be taken into consideration if we want to improve the situation of nighttime accessibility.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, right.
I don't know if this answers, but
yeah, it's completely that. Maybe Violeta, do you have a question, maybe, or the other person? I don't know.
Yeah, there was a question from Violeta in the chat. So 2 questions for Manuel. I think the first thing I'm going to ask you has already been raised in your presentation. So maybe go deep. How do local identity and aesthetics play in lighting design and global identities, designers, guest artists in the development of festivals? And do you think there is a mediated Instagrammable lighting design aesthetic in festivals?
Well, yes and no. So for the first question, the local identity and aesthetics, we have to keep in mind that the construction or the building of a festival of light is mainly the task of the curators and the creative director. So for that, they normally establish a team that changes every year, and around that team, the artists can play, or the art pieces are selected. So many times, and the art directors, they choose the pieces, and they have not why to respect the team or have anything in common with the local identity. Some of the times it does. If we keep in mind that in Lighting Romania, for example, it's very empowering the local community of artists, I will say the aesthetics, well, that's a hard question. If we could recover, or we could call in here the big ones of the sociology, like Bourdieu or something else, right? About the taste, if we are going on that direction. But normally, yes, we can find some trends, we can see some similarities, not only in one situation, in one location, but in many other locations, as far as the artists have some global languages that they share, and also they are always they are always looking for new forms to express themselves or new technologies to implement in their works. But if you ask me, particularly in the local, like the global local, and not only the artists, there are some pieces that are better received by the audiences than others. And so many times it has a lot to see with the literacy of these people on arts, because that's something that I haven't spoken in this presentation. But depending on the level of instruction and the level of knowledge of arts of the location, some pieces are better conceived than others. But that's something that we could talk hours and hours. And regarding the Instagrammable, that's a goal. That's one of the goals that the festival directors, they always try. Instagram is publicity, which means free publicity. So they are always trying to make people remember, create this kind of sharing practices of their experience, because it makes possible that other people come to the festival, and also they gain more notoriety in internet. And sometimes, and that's something important to say as well, many artists, they decide to participate in a festival or in another, depending on the number of sharings that they can get of their own work, especially the new generations of light artists that they are trying to make their own career and they are trying to debut. So Instagram is a key part of festivals of light. I'm not sure if I am answering you, but yeah.
Thank you.
So there is another question from Miriam, for Manuel also. Do you think this kind of festivals is a new way or strategy to increase tourism? How important is tourism for economy of the city?
New, I wouldn't call it new. The first Festival of Light that we have record is from 1993. So it's kind of a long way. But since 2015, that it was the International Year of Light, festivals of light, they bloom and they develop like mushrooms everywhere in the world. Probably because the cost of shipping artworks decrease a lot. Also because it's quite cheap to replicate an artwork in situ. And also because so many times the only thing that you need is a good projector or a series of good projectors and the software installed in your computer, and you can project it on the wall. Also the popularity of these kind of events, even though they are not really cheap, but they are kind of easy to perceive their revenue that comes back as an investment of the festival. For example, one of the festivals I am following from very close is Lumina Cascais. It's here in Portugal. It's a festival of 3 days, and every day they receive 400,000 people in the town. So 400,000 people in the town is the double of inhabitants of the city, which means that the city is crowded on the local business. They can actually sell, and the local business in low season are reactivated. So they make a lot of money in low season. So municipalities are aware of this, and they are exploring these festivals as a tool for bringing people in town, also to make it the internationalization, to give value to the local heritage, kind of urban marketing, like we were saying before. So,
Russia. But there is one.
Okay, it's a cheap way to bring money in town. And when I say cheap, is not because the festival are cheap, because they are absolutely not cheap at all, but the revenue compensates. So in answer to your question, it's not a new way, it's not a new strategy, it's an old strategy that existed for a long time, at least 30 years mostly. but 20 years, but it has a boom now, and it seems that it comes for lasting, and they definitely they are a key component in municipalities that depend on tourism.
Thank
Basically,
you.
that's my research. But yeah.
Okay, is there any other question can I participate?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I have two questions, one for Manuela and one for Chiara. It had called my attention that light festivals tend not to cross with other cultural sectors, for example, music. I mean, is there any tendency to music festivals start being at the same time as light festivals, or they tend to be segregated? That will be for Manuel.
So actually, yes and no. Yes and no. The yes, it goes because these kind of events are part of a global annual strategy made or set up by the municipalities, the regions, or inter-regions as well, because we can find some festivals of lights that they are in between areas, right? They are in frontier areas. But as they are part of a global annual scheme for programming, they try not to compete one to each other. Because if they compete one to each other, they are losing or the possibilities to bring or attract people, or many municipalities, they have not enough infrastructure to host all the incoming people. Also, we have to keep in mind that many times these festivals of light, they take place in secondary cities, not in the biggest cities. So the hosting infrastructure is not enough. Or if they compete one to each other, they lose the market. We have a good example of this in Lyon, for example, even that this year is not going to happen. The Festival of Light of Lyon, it takes place in Lyon and in a nearby city, but all the hotels, all the hosting, all the equipments are always full booked 2 years in advance. So if they compete with all the kind of festivals that they bring loads of people, we know that it's not going to be efficient, and it's not going to happen because they have not the equipments necessary. Basically, that's why. And the no is, even that the festivals of light, they take place in a time that is not the same of the festivals or musical festivals, the artists that they are in the festivals of light, many times they work in festivals of music. Because by the end of the day, they are scenic lighters or scenic illuminators or scenic etc. So we can say that depending on the cultural platform that we are talking, the artists or the people who are involved, so many times they transcend and they go from one kind of festival to another. Because by the end of the day, that's what they do best, lightning and provoking this kind of feelings with light. So we can find them in both structures.
Thank you, Manuel. And I have another question for Chiara. Well, first of all, I think your theoretical framework is very interesting and allow us to explore many different dimensions of the night. But my question is about methodology and the use of social media platforms as a source of information about night. Because one of the problems of doing research about night issues is that the information is not available many times. And for example, in the case of Mexico City, some of the night economy, the bars and other forms of night entertainment are informal or are illegal, so they are not in the official records, and there's a problem. And I noticed that you use the Yelp platform, and I would like to know more about your experience of using this information coming from social media. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, thank you for the question. Yeah, basically I was looking about data about just opening times. I contacted the Chamber of Commerce of Milan and the municipality, of course, but nobody had any kind of data about what is open when. So I was a bit desperate, and at that time, the only option was Yelp, which is, for those who don't know it, it's just a crowdsourced website where people post reviews on services, on yeah, different kind of services. So I thought that was a good way to have an idea of what was open when. But of course, as you also said, there are so many activities going on that are not that don't appear in this kind of data sets. Then one thing is also that you can't really use this data like for a publication. For example, I could not use this data. I discovered this after, of course, all the work on it, because you have to really comply to some terms of use. And even for research, they allow you to use it also only in aggregate form. So it's becoming harder and harder now to look for opening times. Another option is OpenStreetMap, that in the last years has started to collect data about opening times and adding them as a layer in their maps. Otherwise, I haven't tried to look for data in other ways. Of course, data are there. There are data. The point is that they are not open. They are not accessible. And also to access this kind of data, as the Yelp data, you need to have IT skills. So I had, of course, to ask a friend who is a computer scientist, and we just scripted a query to the database of Yelp. So it can be very hard as a sociologist, especially, to access this kind of data, since they are not available otherwise. Other forms of other social media or data sources, I can't recall any now, but can be used for this kind of analysis. Hope this answers. Thank you.
Thank you.
I also have a question for both of you. There are no other questions in the chat, I think. Yes. Okay. So for Manuel, maybe you mentioned the Year of Light in 2015. What was that initiative? As it is like a new, related to a new boom. I'm really curious about that. Also, is there what are the issues related to climate change? Because light, I mean, general lighting in cities actually questions this issue of climate change, and of course it's artistic, but I'm sure that there are links, and also maybe a more general question about how does your study relate to the field of night studies, in the sense that we can feel that the question of urban marketing is very strong, of night as leisure, but I'm wondering, because you didn't mention any author, I think, and so I'm wondering how you can relate to maybe other authors specialized in night studies. And for Chiara, I was curious to know about alternative access. I mean, of course, thank you very much for all the theoretical framework. It was very, very interesting, the way you presented access or accessibility, and I was wondering about alternative ways. Of course, I guess bicycles are an alternative way, or others are maybe sharing I don't know, a car or something like that. So if you have any clue about that, I would be interested.
Well, in answer to your first question, 2015, it was the International Year of Light. It was set by the UNESCO. So that year, the executive board decided to making a special point on all the industries that they are related to the light, not only in the illumination sector, but also in other fields of expertise, like lenses and so on. It's part of the compromise that they have, the UNESCO, to dedicate each year to a different topic. But, and also it was related with a big article that it was on the golden age of the miracle of light, etc., etc. But it was a decision made by the UNESCO to dedicate a year. But UNESCO and other international authorities, in order to promote this year, they opened so many fundings. They opened a lot of fundings. Europe had a lot of expenditure money to celebrate this year. So many cultural industries, they saw a possibility to get this funding and develop new projects. So in 2015, they impulsionate this kind of events and this kind of creative industry. So under the topic of the light, it's very easy to relate the projections or the installations with light with the topic of light. That's the justification of the big boom in 2015. The point is that many municipalities and many other districts that they host for that year, these kind of events, they saw that they had a lot of possibilities to a touristification of the night, right? My integration with the topic of the night is going more into the point of the touristification of the night and also the urban marketing and so, but it's especially focused on how these kind of events, they are a very good marketing tool or reactivation or regeneration for the cities during the night. In that case, if you want to, that I quote somebody, we could mention my colleague Jordi Nofre, who has been working on the touristification of the night for a long time, or Emmanuel Giordano, who had worked a lot in this. And I think that Emmanuel has been already in this seminar. So the touristification and also the exploitation of these events for the remarketing or city branding, it's during the night and specifically on the night, far of the typical festival of music, because they are two different targets. Festivals of music, normally they are more focused, normally, and depending on the kind of music, they are more focused on young people, even that the festivals of light is a more general or familiar target that they have in mind. So this kind of segregation, this kind of economic impact on this kind of tool for reimagining and to beat the seasonality, it's my justification, if you want to say somehow, to relate to the night. But, and I'm not quite sure if I'm answering your question. Yeah.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. And I think this articulation with music festivals is also very interesting. And I'm not sure I understood what was the first reference you mentioned before Emmanuel Giordano. If you can copy paste it in the chat, that would be perfect, so I can check it.
I will do.
Thank you very much. And the climate change issue.
Sure. Well, that's a very good question, and I was expecting somebody to ask me that, because light pollution is a serious thing. It's a very serious thing, as many researchers, they have already claimed that this kind of lightning pollution change has a very negative impact on the biodiversity of the cities. Obviously, in the cities, there is more things living than only humans. And the answer that they give the municipalities and many other authorities is that these festivals are very short in time. So it's okay to have them. Or many times the answers that they give is the lighting that we have in the street is lower in lumias. Lumias is the unity for lighting and controlling and measuring. It's lower in lumia than in the normal public lighting. So they always find a kind of solution for that. It was built an international association that is called LUCI to try to avoid on these kind of situations, but they always talk about the same thing: the number of lumias, the time of the festivals, the technologies that they are used, because we have to talk about different technologies. the arrival of the LED technology helped a lot, as they had a lower impact and a lower pollution. But collecting and connecting your question to the case study that you presented today, in Romania, these kind of technologies are very expensive and they are not very popular. So the pollution is huge and massive, especially because despite of all the festivals of light that they began normally by the sunset and they finish by midnight, in Romania, they connect the lights at the sunset and they turn the lights off with the public lighting. So the installations are all night long connected, but it seems that it's cheaper. The point is that it's cheaper for them to have the lights all night long than worry about pollution. But unfortunately, those are politics that it will take some time to change their minds.
But maybe my question was not specific enough, because of course, okay, it's very interesting to know how they justify the waste. But I was wondering also if there was a kind of awareness that was fostered around this issue of climate change through these festivals, or it's just like, or it's not.
Well, in the case of Romania, the last edition or the previous one, it was dedicated to awareness, and it was trying to educate the municipality. Unfortunately, it didn't work through. And many of the festivals, they have even special projections to try to create an awareness. You know, sometimes, for example, the case of Lumina Cascais, that is one that I know very well. They had a video projection that it was presenting a story about how bad it was, this kind of pollution. So they know about these kind of situations, but sometimes there is not a proper way to get over, you know, but they know. And in the biggest festivals like Eindhoven or in Lyon, they have special people working in teams to minimize the lightning pollution. So there is an awareness, but they have to come up with the resources they have sometimes.
Yes, because I was thinking about music festivals again, and they're always like, not all of them, but many of them, they have like this idea of experimenting, of social experiments. And so they'll try through the festival to use like new types of bathroom, ecological bathroom. So I was wondering if light festivals could be also a time where the city as a city experiments on a new type of public lighting, or it's just like reduced to the installations and the artworks, or is it like an occasion for the cities to experiment a new type of lighting in relation to climate change or security, or I don't know.
Well, those are different topics, but yeah. For example, what we have to keep in mind something, right? And this is something that is quite important in my consideration and in my opinion. So many municipalities, they don't really get very worried about the environmental impact of the festival, because they really think that it's a short time and it's gone. And also they are trying to invest the less money and get the biggest revenue possible. So that means that if they have some lumias that they are not adequate, but they are cheaper, they are going forward with that. But the directors of the festivals, many of them, they are very worried about this because they have the responsibility and so on. And they always try to use new technologies. In contrast, many authors and many artists, they criticize these things because they create an artwork with these specific things and these lamps and these bulbs. And if they change, the effect is different. So we have different perspectives, and so many times they are against one to each other. But in another set of things, we are not talking about lighting pollution, the directors of the festivals, they are always worried with the carbon footprints that they do. So they are always trying to go digital instead of printing maps or other kind of supplemental materials that it could be very good for the visitor to have a map and move through. They are investing more into apps for example. People, they can download their app and they can navigate through the city with the app, and that means paperless, and they are always looking for new ways for waste recycling or waste, new ways to reuse the waste or minimize their own waste or the visitors' waste. So there is an awareness, but always depending on the money. So that's a very tricky situation. So unfortunately, not many sponsors or stakeholders, they care that much about the environmental circumstances, but they are more focused on revenue and visitors sometimes.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, your question was about if I considered alternative forms of access, modes of transport for access in the night. And no, I only focused on public transport. And because in a perspective of access equalities, I wanted to consider a service that would be accessible to the most users. So of course, biking through the night in Milan is probably the best way to move around, because the city is flat and it's not congested, because Milan normally is not a bike friendly city, but during the night the car traffic is of course much lower, and it's great to bike through the city at night. But in order to bike, the individual have to have some competence, some skills that are needed also to ride a e-scooter or to drive a shared car, because there is also a car sharing service, or to even to call Uber, or to use any other, let's say, new mobility service. So they require specific skills, specific competencies, while public transport requires still some competencies, of course, but less for sure. So in a perspective of access inequalities that takes into consideration also of the possible individual needs, I thought that public transport, and of course also focusing on a public service providing access to urban opportunities, I thought it was extremely relevant to focus on public transport. But yeah, of course, it's many people move by bike at night, or walk when they can, where there is a higher density of opportunities, and it's easier to access them in that way. And many, of course, use the private car.
Thank you. I guess maybe you mentioned it, but to what extent the issue of cost is involved in this limitation of public transport at night? Do you know?
You mean the cost of providing a service?
Yes,
by
exactly.
the public transport authorities? Well, yeah, it's mainly what is the main argument when, for example, in Milan for the Expo in 2015, they introduced a service that was running 24/7. It was great, but then they had to reduce the service, still keeping some night routes, but very much reduced. And they justified this reduction because of low ridership at night, not enough users to support financially the provision of a service, which was meant, it was implemented a bit before the Expo, but it was really used as an attractiveness instrument for the Expo. So it's once the Expo was over, it stayed for some months, and then it was reduced. So yeah, the issue of cost is of course considered, but it's a thing of prioritizing expenses. So yeah, it's a political choice.
Yes, thank you very much. Anyone with a question? Thank you, Manuel.
Only last commentaire about pollution, light pollution.
Yes.
It's like Manuel says, we have the lower luminaires, but about intensity of light, that's the same. The damage of the environment and the wildlife is really important, even if we're talking about the short time. So yeah, it's a huge problem, like Manuel said. And only for Chiara, yeah, I think that your research is really passionate. Maybe the reaction and what about the modifies, what about the challenge for change this situation? So all the questions about that, but it's really complex about transport, about public transport is really it's really complex. So only thank you again for accept to present your work. Michael, maybe you want to say something about the ending?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just there is one last comment in the chat. Carmen says that in Ciudad de Mexico years ago, Eduardo Matos planned a spectacle to recreate the real size of the Templo Mayor with laser, but it was impossible due to the lights of the streets in the city center, and that was sad. Yeah, and that's also a good example maybe of a failed light event or light festival. Yeah, thanks again for your presentations, and thanks for participating in the seminar. Next session will be just give me 1 second, in next month, and it will be
18 November.
Yeah, 18th of November with Andreina Seijas from the Harvard Graduate School of Design on night governance and Gestión Nocturna, and Yolanda Macias about intimacies and emotions in the contemporary night. So thank you again. I'm going to send the link of the blog, so for those who want to participate, and yeah, please keep following the seminar, and if you want to keep updated, you can send your email address in the chat and we can add you to the list. And also for those who need a constancia de participación here in Mexico, you can follow the guidelines in the chat. And thank you again.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night.
Thanks. Bye.
Good morning here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Michael.